We forgot. Let's try that again. All right, welcome everyone. This is the Library System of Bradford County. We're at the Wyalusing Public Library, and we're joined today by the Wyalusing Valley Museum. Curator Morgan Clinton is here with us today. She's going to give a presentation on the Wyalusing Lodge Hall. Afterwards, we will have a Q&A. This is recorded, and the recording will be posted on the Library System Facebook page and also on our YouTube page for future viewing if anyone is interested. Take us away.
All right, thank you. Do I need to hear this? Yes. Get rid of that for you. All right, well, thanks for having me come and talk. This is going to be on the shorter side for my presentation, so don't worry, I'm not going to talk all night. But I thought it would be nice to do a little history on the Lodge Hall building, which belongs to the museum and has a really interesting history, but also is a building that we've been doing some work on recently. So at the very end, I'll get you caught up on some of the projects that the museum has been doing to preserve this building. And just to remind you, oops. I didn't think to test how to.
It might be the arrow keys.
Okay, that's what I hit. Right, well now we have advanced. Okay, so just to remind you what the Lodge Hall looks like. This is a pretty recent picture of the building. So this is how it looks now. It's located on Church Street in Wyalusing, and this building was built in the 1870s. I'm going to be a little vague on some dates. There's some conflicting information, so I'm just going to do approximates. I don't want to lead you astray with too specific a date that isn't actually accurate. But in 1869, the Lodge Hall was not there. This is a map from the Bradford County Atlas, 1869. And the Lodge Hall would end up being right here. I don't know if you can see the arrow on the screen, but next to the AEB Porter store, which is a photo studio actually. So that's where it would end up being built. 1869, definitely not there. And then this photo is really interesting because I'm fairly certain that this building in the foreground right here is the predecessor to the current building. We know that there was a building there that was called the Halleck Block that burned in a fire in the early 1870s. So sometime between 1869 and the fire, a building was built that was being used as a store by Mr. Halleck, who owned a jewelry store and optician. We'll talk a little bit more about his store in a bit. But just to orient you, so this is approximately where the Lodge Hall is now, but it is not the same building, probably the predecessor. Over here is the Gaylord House, which was sort of the foundational piece for the Middendorf Hotel, if you're familiar with that. Currently, the Presbyterian Church would be over here on this side of the street. And then kind of in the background over here, I don't know if you can see this sign right where this arrow is pointing now. That would be the original version of the Wyalusing Hotel. But just to give you a little orientation, Main Street over here, Church Street up here, and then going into Taylor Avenue. By 1885, the building that we now own was built. So sometime in the 1870s, that was constructed, probably early to mid 1870s. And it was built with the idea of having a store and a meeting space in it. Almost from the very beginning, the hall was used as meeting space for community groups. And in the 19th century, early 20th century, it is the heyday of societies, fraternal organizations, groups like Masons and Independent Order of Odd Fellows. So this particular hall ended up being strongly associated with the Odd Fellows right from the start, but also had other groups like the Grand Army of the Republic, which was the veterans organization for Union soldiers, met there. And it was a meeting space for other community groups for short periods of time as well, including the Grange. And then some other auxiliary groups that went along with those different organizations. So H.J. Halleck was the first store owner on the first floor of the building. And he had a watch, jewelry, and optician shop. And he occupied that space for a decade or so. And then he ended up building his own building. This advertisement is from 1873, which would have been right after he started the business. And then around 1891 is when he moves out of the lodge hall and into his own space. We do have some of his glasses in our collection. If anybody has a watch or jewelry that they'd like to donate, please let me know. And then this would give you a look, 1885, about the same time as that photograph that I showed just a moment ago. And you can see on this Sanborn insurance map that the Lodge Hall is marked jewelry and IOOF Hall, jewelry being Halleck and IOOF being the Independent Order of Oddfellows. The Oddfellows are an organization that, similar to Masons, has a ritualistic aspect to it, but also does a lot of social and community work as well. So they're multifaceted and have been around for quite a long time. They existed in Wyalusing before this building, but the specific group that was in this building, the particular lodge that was here, was formed about the same time that the building came into existence. And there's a ribbon from the White Lily Lodge number 808, which is what who was meeting at the building that we own. And the gavel on the right was made from a piece of the Welder cabin, which was then used as a gavel for the Oddfellows. So it was made and presented to them. The Welder cabin was one of the oldest structures in Wyalusing that was still standing in the early 20th century. It has since disintegrated. It was located somewhere close to where Wyalusing New Albany Road intersects with Route 6. And someone took some of the wood from that and carved it into a gavel for the Oddfellows. After Halleck moves out, there was a lady named Rhoda Mollison. And let's see if my, oops, no. All right, for whatever reason, my highlighting has disappeared, but I have this excerpt from the Bradford County Directory from 1900, and she is second from the bottom here. And she was a seamstress who lived and worked out of the Oddfellows building. Millie Reed talks about her as being somebody who was really good with plants. It sounds like she maybe lived in the basement level and had her shop on the first floor, or maybe all of it out of the basement. Is still unclear. But she was one of the other shop owners who worked out of the Oddfellows building. The meeting space was on the second floor. And this is just to kind of give you a little bit of context before we get to the next picture. Again, 1885, and up here we have the Gaylord House, but there's no church building yet. But this is where it's going to end up. So Second Presbyterian Church needed to build a new building because the building they had been meeting in burned. And in 1891, they rented the Oddfellows space as a place to hold their worship services while they completed construction of this building. This is a Presbyterian meeting. It's not just the local congregation. It's a much bigger group, but it shows you a little bit of those sort of distinctive triangular stained glass windows on the building now. Two other Sanborn map views, one from 1897 and one from 1903. And you see that there is a little addition now on the side of the Lodge Hall. So it still says Jewelry and Oddfellows Hall, but now we've got a hose house on the side. And that's referring to this, oops, again, I got to remember I can't point at the screen because you Zoom people aren't going to be able to see what I'm doing. So over here, this little garage addition was put on to house the first Wyalusing Fire Company, the Annex Hook and Ladder Company, formed in 1894. And their hook and ladder truck is currently in the basement of the Lodge Hall. So the one that you can see there in the picture, they're in their parade regalia right now. But they had their equipment stored in this garage for a number of years. And you can see, again, 1911, it's still there. By 1926, it's gone. And they had something like 1,000 feet of 2.5-inch hose and 2 hose carts and 1 hook and ladder truck. This is a view down Church Street in the 1920s. You can see the Presbyterian, oops, I don't know what I just did. There we go. You can see the Presbyterian church on the left and the Mindorf Hotel just beyond it with that sort of wizard hat tower on the top. And then over on the right here, kind of behind the trees, I'm going to look at a close up in a minute, but here's the Lodge Hall in the 1920s. And you can see the porch configuration was a little different than it is now. And I don't know if you remember from that 1885 photograph, but the paint scheme has changed. Originally, it had a dark color on the trim work and a light color on the siding. It's flipped, so they've got sort of a medium color on the siding and a light color on the trim. That'll be a little more evident in the next photos from the 1930s, where you can still see these shop front windows in place. And this door over here, which goes directly into the stairwell up to the 2nd floor, so that the meeting space was accessible from an outside door directly without having to walk through the shop on the 1st floor. This is a little bit later, probably later in the 30s, early in the 40s, and you can just see it here on the side. We don't have a whole lot of straight on shots of the Lodge Hall itself. So we're pulling information from other pictures that it's just in the background. And then this is from a photo of a snowstorm in the 1940s. And again, you can see these nice big shop front windows are still intact. So the Oddfellows occupied the Lodge Hall until the 1980s. They sold it to the Masons in 1981. And this is just some of the Masonic china that they graciously donated to the museum for our display. And the Masons had been in Wyalusing for much longer than that, of course, but they had been meeting in the 3rd floor of the brick building that faces Main Street, but the back end of it also crosses over to Church Street. It's now owned by Rick Sherman. It used to be the Ottaviani's building, but the 3rd floor of that building also had a meeting space, and that had been used by the Masons for quite a long time. When they ended up acquiring the building, they did some modifications to make the 1st floor into a more workable or a more updated social hall kind of space for them, and other upgrades as well. So here's some pictures from 2012 and 2017. The Wyalusing Masonic Lodge ended up merging with the Lodge in 2015, and at the end of 2015, they gave the building to the museum. At that point in time, we were located in leased space over by Grovedale Winery, and we had been kind of looking for some place to move the museum to, and they knew about that. Also, we're interested in making sure that this building stayed a community building because it had served the community for so long. And so they ended up giving it to the museum. And we then started looking for a second building because this building wasn't big enough to hold all of our stuff that we could use jointly with us. So we ended up purchasing a building on Main Street And the idea is that the main exhibits for the museum will be located in the Main Street building, and then this building will serve as our annex, where we can have program space, where we can hold workshops and lectures like this one. And also on the second floor have our research archives. And we, in 2020 and 2021, were able to do 2 back-to-back projects that came out of a preservation plan that we did in 2018. So 2018, we were able to get grants from the Endless Mountains Heritage Region and from the Pennsylvania Historic and Museum Commission to put together a preservation plan for the building. A lot of that had to do with kind of evaluating to make sure that it was going to function for the uses that we wanted to use it for, and that there weren't any, significant issues that needed to be fixed. It was in pretty good shape, except for some exterior trim issues, which suddenly got worse in 2019 when we discovered that squirrels had gotten into the cornice that runs across the front of the building. So this bit up here, and you can see the difference between 2016 and 2020. So the squirrels got in there, poked a pretty good sized hole in the top of the sort of box that forms that. And so some water damage that started popping some pieces off. So we were able to get one of the Pennsylvania Route 6 Alliance facade grants and get that repaired in 2020. So that's the new cornice. There were only 2 of the brackets that needed to be replaced, and then some of this spacing trim here, but most of this is still the original, just cleaned up, primed, so it's in better shape. Then in 2021, we were able to get a grant to paint the rest of the building and also put gutters up on the roof. So I've got a few pictures. We, in the process of doing that, decided it was a good time to see what was under some of the press board. So we pulled some of that off. And this is the original door that goes into the stairwell up to the Oddfellows Hall, and then where the Masons also met. But you can see the IOOF at the top there with number 808 for the White Lily Lodge. And we also opened up the windows on the second floor. They are not functional. Neither of those things is functional. They're closed on the other side, but we thought that would brighten up the building. And also let us see that cool window again. The ultimate plan will be to someday replace the storefront windows. So if you can see down here, these windows were replaced at some point with smaller windows. The goal is someday to get more grant money to open this up so that these are back to being those full size. The original windows go all the way up to the cornice and get those replaced, and then also add a handicap ramp to get wheelchair access to the front door. And at that point in time, we might play around with paint colors as well. But for the time being, we just wanted to get things cleaned up and coated so that everything was being preserved. So we just have everything coated in white. This is what the front of it now looks like. It was a little tricky. I should have taken the picture at a different time of day when the sun was shining from a different direction. It's a little backlit, but it does look nice and clean and tidy now. So we were really grateful to be able to get that grant money and the money from some individual donors who were able to make that project happen. Other projects that we have in the works, we are still working on the Main Street building. We've got a little ways to go, but I at least feel like we're getting to the point where we know what all the projects are. We've gotten past the discovery stage mostly. And we have a crew of volunteers who have been invaluable in keeping things moving through COVID and all of the other, whenever there's a delay for another reason, they can keep some small projects moving along, and that has been a godsend. So that's been great as well. I am going to open it up to questions now. If anybody has anything that they want to ask about, anything that I forgot to talk about, I believe, they ask questions through the chat, or do you want to have them do it verbally?
If you have a question, put in chat that you have a question, and then I'll call on you so we're not talking over each other. And
if you have a question in the room, you can just ask me.
yeah.
And I will try to repeat it so that it definitely gets picked up on the microphone.
Well, I'll break the ice. I noticed in one of the Sandberg maps that when the hose company side was still there, that it listed it as a jail.
You're right. I think I skipped that part. Yes. So one of the many things that the building was used for at one point in time was the town jail. It also was the place where they had the vote to incorporate the borough and had the first election of borough officers. That would have been in 1887. And so it got used for a number of different community things that weren't just meeting space for social groups. The jail was there, I believe, according to the Sanborn maps, it was on the first floor. So there must have been some point in between sewer owners when they were using that first floor space as a holding area. I need to look into that a bit more to see if I can get specifics, because that would be interesting to know more about who got to stay there. All the good gossip.
Anyone else have any questions?
Anybody else have a question?
This is tangentially related.
Sure.
The Oddfellows, so in all the history stuff I'm doing, they seem to have been incredibly active in Bradford County.
Yes.
Incredibly, like I'd never heard of them before. I started digging into around here, and they show up almost as often as the Masons, if not more. Is that a regional thing?
To some degree, but they are almost as prolific as the Masons, I think, that it generally in the United States. So late 19th, early 20th century, you get this huge boom in societies, fraternal organizations. And some of them, it is just a large number of lodges for established groups like Oddfellows and Masons, who have been around for hundreds of years. But you also get a bunch springing up that are really specific. They're for a particular ethnicity, like the Ukrainian Lodge, or they are a service organization that serves a particular mission. There are lodges where they conduct everything in German or in whatever language that they're trying to preserve within that particular community. So it's just a huge boom in that time period. And I think that because Oddfellows and Masons are some of the ones that did have a more of an established parent organization, that they also end up sticking around beyond that peak period for social groups. And then you get new ones as well that come up, like the Lions and some of the other service organizations like that tend to come along a little bit later than those other two. But there are a lot of Oddfellows in this area compared to some other places I have been, in terms of them still being in existence. Yeah.
Oh, they are still in existence?
Yeah. I don't know where the closest lodge is, but they're definitely, the overall organization is still in existence. So.
And you mentioned GAR and probably some of the other fraternal organizations related to veterans are probably were active there too.
I don't think that any of the other veterans organizations ended up meeting in this building, but the GAR was possibly, so they at one point had a building of their own, and I believe it burned. So I don't know if that was the instigation to meeting in this building or not. But a lot of those military related groups end up having their own space. So they seem to be the ones most likely to have acquired or built a building. that's one of the other kind of interesting things about this building and its relationship with these groups, though. The building was never owned outright by the Oddfellows or the Masons. There was always a secondary organization that was the Hall Association that owned the building and managed the building, even though it was the same people that legally separated it from the parent group so that the local group had more control over what happened to the building as an asset. So that was just kind of interesting. And that was pretty much right from the start. And I would be interested to know if there was some legal reason in terms of like what you being allowed to own the property, that they needed to have a certain type of group established in order to do that. But almost immediately there is a Hall Association that's created, and they're the ones that end up owning the building pretty much. Now, there is kind of a in-between period when the property is owned by several different people and they're probably leasing the space or in some way using the space that way. But the Hall Association exists prior to the purchase or acquisition of the building by that group. So they kind of established the Hall Association as well, at first it was Wyalusing Hall Association, and it was sort of more generic to find, build, or lease a space for community groups to meet. Then there's an Oddfellows Hall Association that's created, and they're the ones who end up owning the building eventually. And that one's a little bit more specific to the Oddfellows, but it's just kind of an interesting way of handling the sort of technical part of owning it.
Was it still in a situation like that when it was donated to the museum? It was still in a hole?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the Masons had a separate Hall Association that owned the building. Yeah, so it was the Wyalusing Masonic Lodge Hall Association.
Dare I ask how they got the hose company's cart in the basement?
It wasn't easy. Okay, so I don't know how well you can see. There is right down here side, there is a sliding barn door that goes directly into the basement. It is walk out at the back. So it's a very tall, narrow building actually. And the the guys that helped me move it in had to do some finagling to get, it's pretty long. So getting it around the corner and through the door at the right angle was tricky. So, but they did it.
So it's going to live there forever?
I don't know. Probably. So our thought at the moment is that eventually that ground floor, or sorry, that basement level will be renovated to be a display space for our vehicle artifacts. So that's not the only thing down there at the moment, but it is currently, it's not, it doesn't have the right things in place for it to be open to the public. So we do need to do a little bit of renovation down there before that's able to happen. I have also considered possibly, I don't know if it'll work, but moving one of the vehicles into the Main Street building when we are setting up the exhibits there, but we might not have enough space to do that. We might need to keep them all in this building and then have that be an extra part that you go see when you come on a tour.
Would there ever be the possibility, not in your lifetime or mine probably, but of actually connecting the two buildings? Because there haven't been any photographs that show that, but the back of the lodge hall,
yeah, let me see if I can,
could be physically tied into the back of the Main Street building.
See if I can scoot all the way back to the beginning here, because that photo shows it a little bit better.
Maybe solved though, little by little. As far as the
So the other building that we own, the back of it is right here. Oh, is that, yeah, that's shown. So they are only divided by an alley. So technically we own all of the property in between. It is currently access for people who own other buildings that back up to that alley. So I think having a walking path between the two, certainly doable. Having a physical connection, probably more complicated. And also in part because the actual level of the two buildings, so this is the second floor of the other building that you can actually see in this photo. So we're talking a pretty drastic difference in height. Well, I don't know. I mean, we've talked to like pie in the sky, having a skywalk across, that'd be fun.
Why not?
Like you said, somebody else's problem, right? Down the line. But yeah, I think that there's a possibility of that happening at some point, but it's not high on our priority list right now. we want to get the Main Street exhibit space open as soon as we can, which we've got a ways to go still. So,
Do you have a time frame on that at all?
I have decided that I'm just not guessing anymore because nothing has happened on any of the schedules I thought it was going to. So it's going to happen when it happens, and it will happen. It will happen.
Is it dependent on funding?
Partly, yeah. So we are still fundraising. We've got a little over $100,000 left to raise on our original goal for that renovation. And that's part of it for sure. It's also just scheduling everything is tricky. So it's been interesting learning how far ahead you have to start talking to people to get things to actually get on their schedules. So yeah, that's part of it. We've had a couple of instances where there was grant money involved and the schedule was completely out of our control, and we just had to do things on the schedule that the grant went with. And yeah, so things have that's sort of where I've ended up with the, well, we just do the next thing and we do the next thing and eventually it'll be done. But I can't guess when that's going to be anymore.
Do you have a time frame in which you have to finish?
Yeah, usually you do. Yeah. They vary quite a bit, is what I am learning. So I have been used to doing grants that were on a 1-year time frame, and more the construction grants tend to be on a 2 to 6 year time frame. So that's been interesting. But yes, usually you have a deadline and it has to get done by then.
If it's like the grants for the libraries too, when it comes to any kind of capital improvement, you have to have a certain number of bids and there's a whole process you have to use.
Yeah.
It gets really messy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you have to keep track of all of your.
Oh, every penny they want to know.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's extra bookkeeping. Yeah. But that's
So
how it
I
works.
hate it when people get experience.
More work.
$400, and now we're gonna have to keep track of all this.
So for those who want to support the Wyalusing Valley Museum, I know you guys sell a couple of
Yeah.
books.
So you should definitely go visit our website. So I'm going to plug a few things. So go visit our website. We have books that we have published are for sale on the website. We have a photo book that is a collection of photographs from the Wyalusing area that we have in our collection. They're fabulous. It's really fun. So it's mostly pictures with some captions to tell you what you're looking at. The other book is a collection of articles from the Rocket Courier that were curated by a student for her senior project and then put together into a book. There's some really great stuff in there, like article that Margaret Fee did where she talks way around town the way it was when she was a child in the 1880s. And she describes, going down Main Street and then, whatever, all the things that were there. So that's really interesting. There's a bunch of other similar kind of, or there's at least one other similar kind of article with one of the Omis. Just an interesting collection of articles that are about historical topics. So those 2 books are on our website. We also have a donate button on our capital campaign page, the Move to Main Street campaign. We have a page on our website for that. So if you're interested in helping us out with that. And there's also a form if you'd like to become a member of the museum. You can go on our website and get the form to do that as well. We also have a YouTube channel. So if you're interested, we only have a few videos up now, but the Helmets Ferry video is excellent, if I say so myself. I really enjoyed making it. It's super interesting stuff to make a video about. So go check that out. And then there's 2 others that are about photographs in our collection that we just take a deeper look at. So they're not very long. They're like 5 or 10-minute videos, and we hope to make a bunch more. So, and then we do have a Facebook page as well. So if you want to follow us there, yeah.
Are you planning any additional fundraisers in the?
But I was talking to somebody about this earlier. I feeling like this has been really encouraging. I have had 4 programs in the past week and a half, or starting last week and going through Monday of next week. I ended up with 4 small programs scheduled. And that's the first time I've been able to do outreach programs since shut down a year and a half ago. So I am feeling more like, okay, we can actually plan things now. And yeah, we probably will be planning some fundraisers. In the past, some of the things that we've done, so you can keep an eye out if we get them going again, we would love to do that. We did a silent movie night where we would show, there are 2 silent films that were made in Wyalusing in the 1950s, just by people in the community who got together and put them together. And they're really fun. That's about a 20-minute, watching both of them takes about 20 minutes. And then we showed a silent Hollywood film from the 1920s as well. So silent movie night, keep an eye out for that. And we also do a soft pretzel sale sometimes. So if you like Philly soft pretzels, drive into the city, pick them up, bring them out, and you can pick them up the same day I bring them. So they're delicious. Maybe I'm biased, but so those might be coming up, and then we'll see. We have had in the past other sort of dances and other sort of more dinner type fundraisers as well. So if we have anything like that, it should show up on our Facebook and on our website.
Okay, and the website, what is the address?
Wyalusing.com.
Wyalusing Museum. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a very annoying Wyalusing in Wisconsin that really complicates.
Not the one in Wisconsin.
Really complicates
Pennsylvania
matters.
Wyalusing. Otherwise would be the only one.
Right. Tawanda does that to me. Tawanda, Kansas. Oh. So this was my other question. Do you have any programs upcoming that someone is interested in attending?
Not yet. The only other program I have upcoming is for another small group that it's not open to the public. I'm happy to do programs, though. I should say that as well. We have on our website a listing of some of the programs that we have already prepared. If you have a group that is looking for a speaker and wants something that is history oriented, we have a few choices, including one-room schoolhouses, Civil War in Wyalusing area, and sort of a more general Wyalusing through photographs and maps. So those are options. And if you have a topic you really want me to do, you can ask. I might be able to come up with something. I think the next thing that we'll be doing that's public is not actually scheduled yet, is that we've been talking to the Greater Wyalusing Chamber of Commerce about being the sort of featured organization for one of their after hours events that they've started doing. But it's probably going to be in January, I think, but we haven't yet.
Okay. Did you guys have any further questions?
The wine festival is that a museum?
Yes, so the wine festival is a fundraiser for both the museum and the Lions Club. And that takes place on the second Saturday after Labor Day. And yeah, so that's a good way to support us. That goes towards our general operating support, which is tricky to raise. It's less glamorous than some of the special projects. So yeah, supporting our general operations so we can keep the lights on and all that good stuff is important too. But that's a fun way to do it, to support us.
All right, so of course, I have to plug the libraries.
Yeah.
So we're at the Wyalusing Public Library. John, one of the board members, is here because he's awesome. Thank you, John. And Danny helped us get set up. There is a small local history section right here behind me. I've got it blocked at the table at the moment. Both items that the museum have are available from the library, but I strongly encourage you will do exactly what I did and take one look at them and be like, Morgan, when can I get this? You're going to want it for yourself. And if you guys are ever thinking about publishing anything else, please let me know. All of the libraries are right now, we're really encouraging local history. I know Sarah's done several programs. All the libraries have been talking about local history, but I know Sarah specifically just had a program. And then as the system administrator, I've been doing a history series on Facebook every day since September 1st. It goes to the end of this month. And bouncing around the county for some lesser known history, which has led to some really cool stuff. And yes, Morgan, I want to pick your brain. And every time I think okay, there can't possibly be more, there's more. And so if this is something you guys would want to do, every month or something like quarterly, just to talk about something specific to Wyalusing history, the libraries absolutely love to be able to facilitate that if the meeting space is not available at the museum yet, or if they want to have an alternative space to offer it. So please let us know, let Morgan know, let the library know, whatever. That's something to be interested in.
I realized something else I forgot to say. So while the Main Street building is under construction, we do have an exhibit in the Lodge Hall on the first floor. It is only open seasonally for walk-ins, but we do tours by appointment year-round. So if that is something you're interested in, you just have to call ahead.
If you will send me the information about your YouTube page and those things, I will make sure that they're posted on the Facebook page. Awesome. And I'll share it with Danny so he can share it on theirs as well. Yeah. And we'll share it with this. I'll post the video if you want to go back and look at, or you want to share with someone else. It will be on the library system's Facebook page and on their YouTube page. I will share it with Morgan so she can share it on the museum's pages as well. All right. Anything else, guys? All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Oops, thank you so much for joining us online as well. We hope you had a great time, and we look forward to talking to you again soon. Have a great evening and a very happy Thanksgiving coming up.